Hi everyone, my name's Andrew Chapman and I'm a qualified accountant and business consultant with around 30 years experience of helping the finance department become providers of information, not preventers of activity. Welcome to my channel. So the thing I'm going to be covering today is preventing external fraud or criminal activity from impacting your business. Now, this has been in the news recently, and I know there's a lot of people that are increasingly concerned about this activity, but the good news is the building blocks of these activities have not changed in the last couple of years. It's only the method of delivery that has. So whenever we think about external financial fraud, it's very easy to slip into the mindset of thinking about scammers and hackers and people that are trying to get access to your computer systems. But it's far better to step back and have a holistic view of all your assets and how you need to protect those as part of your organisation. So in terms of external financial crime, I find it's useful to look at things in three broad categories. First of all, someone wants access to your assets. Secondly, someone wants to perform a confidence trick, social engineering or a scam so that you readily hand over some of your assets. Or the third type is when someone's going to perform a confidence trick or a scam to get you to hand over access to assets. I'm going to explore each of those in turn and likewise what the remedies are that can be useful for your organisation. So when we think about someone wanting access to your assets, it could be something as simple as someone wanting access to information, or it could be more complex. They could be looking at things like accessing your cash or cash equivalents, or accessing your customer data, which may not actually hold any value, but may be valuable to someone outside the organisation. So if you cast your mind back 40 years or so, if someone had something valuable in their office to protect, be it cash or cash equivalents, or maybe secret recipes, formulas or files, they would keep those in a safe. They may then get a security consultant to come and review things like how many people have access to the office, how many keys are there, and how many people know the code to the safe. So by having those assets secured and by having procedures and practices around who could access those assets and how they could access them, those companies were minimizing the risk that those assets were going to go missing. It wasn't going to stop someone with a truck and a load of dynamite coming in and trying to take them, but they were minimizing the risk. The major change over the last 40 years has been now we're holding those assets digitally, and those assets can be accessed by someone who may not be in the same physical location as the asset itself. So just because we've changed the way we store our assets doesn't necessarily mean that we need to go away from those security fundamentals of asking who has access, why do they have access, and how are they going to access each of these assets. The second thing we can learn from 40 years ago is that often we would have internal auditors walking through an office, picking up files, asking if the information was valuable, asking how it was secured, and asking who had access to it. So the reality is our mindset around securing assets should really not have changed over the last 40 years. What we need to do in an organisation is have a register of all our potentially valuable assets. Now, these are not necessarily financial assets, they could be other assets. And then we need to critically review those assets to make sure we understand who has access to that asset, why they have access to that asset, and what's the process they need to go through to access that asset. Finally, you may also want to employ a security consultant to come in and test your security, just like we would have done 40 years ago when we got someone to come in and test whether the safe was secure or not. So the last thing that's important is having a culture of securing those assets and making sure that we're following those procedures. If you remember the old days of having the petty cash tin, if anyone went near that without the proper authorization, people would have a major sense of humour failure. And that needs to be the same for our assets, be they digital or physical assets. People need the right authorization and they need to follow the right policies and procedures to get access to those assets. So the next thing we need to talk about is social engineering, scams or confidence tricks that people are pulling on employees, trying to trick them into giving details. Now this is an area where we have seen significant growth over the last couple of years. Because of the popularity of the internet, it means that you can have access to employees even if you're sitting on the other side of the world. The government estimates that in the last 12 months, around 2% of the population have reported a scam to the authorities. The problem is they also know that probably 3 times that many have been scammed and are just too embarrassed to report it, or even worse, didn't even know it happened in the first place. And the problem is, scams work. They're designed to make us act on our natural human instinct or natural emotion. And it's usually time critical, and there's usually a penalty if we don't actually take that action straight away. It's almost impossible to go through every type of scam and educate your employees around everything that could happen. But it is possible to teach them the fundamentals of the scam and what to look out for in their daily business. Most scams share some key ingredients, and once you know them, it makes it a little easier to spot. First of all, it's going to appear to come from someone that you have a pre-existing relationship with. That could be your boss, it could be a loved one, or it could be a supplier, a bank, or even a post office. Secondly, the person is going to ask you to do something, so take an action. Either click on a link, provide some money, or enter your username and password. Third, and most importantly, there's usually a time critical element to these. Something bad is going to happen unless you do this quickly. So there are 3 key elements required to protect your organisation against scams. First of all, education. Teach people how to spot a scam and what to do when they do get scammed. Secondly, independent verification. So ringing a supplier or your bank on a publicly available number or a pre-existing contact and confirming that they actually want you to take that action. The third is bias for following pre-existing processes and not circumventing them just because there's a time critical element. Now, I find that one of the most damaging types of fraud is when someone uses social engineering to gain access to your valuable assets. A number of years ago, I was called into a technology company to investigate an accounts receivable fraud. As part of that investigation, I found out that 78 people within the organisation had full access to all their systems. That included HR, payroll, finance, and critically, the base code for the software that the technology company was selling. Also, we found that a number of those 78 had fallen for a scam where they gave away their username and password. Unfortunately, due to poor procedures, we weren't actually able to tell what the scammers had access to, what they'd copied, what they'd stolen, or if they'd just gone in and had a look and left. And when you look at combining the two, it just becomes a question of maths. The less people that have access to the asset means the less likelihood someone's going to gain access to that through social engineering or scam. So as we get to the end of this video, I just wanted to summarise the couple of things you can do to help prevent your organisation being exposed to financial fraud from an external source. First of all, know your assets, know which ones are valuable, and they're not just your financial assets. It could be customer databases or personal identifiable information. Secondly, define your policies for accessing that information or asset, how people are going to access it, and how we're going to record the access. Third, promote a culture of adhering to that policy. Fourth, educate your people on how to spot a scam and what to do when they get contacted by a scammer. I'm Andrew Chapman, thanks for watching. If you like my content, hit the subscribe button. If you've got any questions or comments, please put them in the comments section down below. Thank you and see you next time.